What would you do if the one thing that made you unique also turned out to be the one thing that destroyed you? I'm Dre, and this is The Midnight Hour. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the Master of Darkness himself, Edgar Allan Poe. And we're going to be specifically looking at his short story, Berenice. Now, Berenice is a very unique story, a very grotesque and dark story, but a very beautifully written one as well. It basically follows a narrator named Aegeus, who never actually mentions his family name, but we are told that he is born into a very prestigious, well-off family line. Now, he is born in the library. That's where he grows up. That's all he really knows are the books and ideas and phrases of all of the volumes therein. Now, Aegeus is unique, and what makes him unique is his monomania. He suffers from this illness that causes him to not only focus on different things, whether they be physical, concrete, or abstract, but to obsess over them to the degree of almost falling into a trance. He does not know where the time goes. He does not know anything about himself other than the fact that he is solely and utterly focused on this one thing. Now, he also has a cousin named Berenice, of course, and she is his exact polar opposite. He studies in a gloomy library all day and all night. She plays out on the fields and in between flowers and all that stuff. So he has this attraction toward her because she represents something he can never have, which is this liveliness, this passion for life, this innocence, right? She is attracted to him because he's so pensive and this deep thinking type of person. While his illness is very of the mind, Berenice also falls ill, but her illness is of the body. And it never actually says what she falls ill of. However, her entire physicalities change. All of her body's frame, her eyes become filmed over, her lips become thin and sunken. And it says that Aegeus is in the library one night and he looks up to see Berenice standing over him. And with this yellow, pale, sickly skin, she smiles at him. And he then notices that the only thing that's left perfectly intact of her is her teeth. And that's exactly what he becomes obsessed with next, is her teeth, and that's all he can think about day in and day out. Finally, if we know a thing about Poe, and we know where this story is headed, then we know that it's going to get really, really dark really, really quickly. And that's exactly what happens. We aren't told exactly in what order the events happen in, but Aegeus, again, is sitting in the library, and there comes a light tap on the door. An orderly comes in. His face is just terrified. And he goes up to Aegeus, who obviously doesn't really know what's going on at this point. And the orderly takes Aegeus by the hands and shows him where the imprint of fingernails are still visible. Aegeus then sees a shovel leaning up against the wall. He looks at a box on the end of the table. So as he leaps in trying to grab it, it falls to the floor, breaks open, and inside are dental instruments and 32 small ivory pieces of what can only be described as Aegeus's complete breakdown. So with all of that summarized, let's look at 3 highlighted parts that I think really, really speak to this story in a beautiful way. The first is the very first paragraph of the story. And I will never forget exactly how I felt when I first read it. Something clicked, something just made me feel like, wow, there's something special going on here. And this is really grotesqueness of this story. Okay, this is the beautiful part. While it's still sad and still very much Poe, it is just written in such a beautiful, melancholic way. Let's read it. Misery is manifold. The wretchedness of earth is multiform. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, its hues are as various as the hues of that arch, as distinct too, yet as intimately blended. Overreaching the wide horizon as the rainbow, how is it that from beauty I have derived a type of unloveliness? From the covenant of peace, a simile of sorrow. But as in ethics, evil is a consequence of good, so in fact, out of joy is sorrow born. Either the memory of past bliss is the anguish of today, or the agonies which are have their origin in the ecstasies which might have been. Now that really speaks to me because we've all been through moments where we remembered happier moments in our lives and we just compare them to the present moment and it just seems like so sad and so much less exciting than things used to be. Poe also says that what could have been can also contribute to our present sadness. And I totally can relate with that. But these words on their own have spoken to me on so many different occasions, and I just can't forget their impact on my life. Now, the second highlighted part is just as beautiful, if not even more so than the first, and that is Aegeus pretty much explaining to us how he came about to be. Quote, there is, however, a remembrance of aerial forms, of spiritual and meaning eyes, of sounds, musical yet sad, a remembrance which will not be excluded, a memory like a shadow, vague, variable, indefinite, unsteady, and like a shadow, too, in the impossibility of my getting rid of it while the sunlight of my reason shall exist. I just think that's such a beautiful way to put things when we think of if we have existed before, you know, past lives and all that good stuff. So I just will let those speak for themselves because I can't give them any more beauty than they already exude. So let's look at the third highlighted part of this story, which to me is the most frightening part, because though Poe never goes into the act itself, he gives us clues to it, and this is definitely one of those clues. It says, I found myself sitting in the library, and again sitting there alone. It seemed that I had newly awakened from a confused and exciting dream. I knew that it was now midnight, and I was well aware that since the setting of the sun, Berenice had been interred. But of that dreary period which intervened, I had no positive, at least no definite comprehension. Yet its memory was replete with horror. Horror more horrible from being vague, and terror more terrible from ambiguity. It was a fearful page in the record of my existence, written all over with dim and hideous and unintelligible recollections. I strived to decipher them, but in vain. While ever and anon, like the spirit of a departed sound, the shrill and piercing shriek of a female voice seemed to be ringing in my ears. I had done a deed. What was it? I asked myself the question aloud, and the whispering echoes of the chamber answered me. What was it? What else can you say other than, wow, just, it's like you don't know what has happened. You know something has happened for sure, but you don't know what, because there is no definite answer there that you are aware of yet, until that orderly knocks on the door quietly and enters and shows you on your palms indented fingernails. And it's just like, wow, Poe really captures that moment like to a T right there. And I just can never read that and not feel something really powerful. Now, to answer our original question, what if the one thing that made you unique ended up being the one thing that destroyed you? Well, that's exactly what happens with Aegeus. His monomania is so uniquely him, but that's exactly what contributes to his utter destruction, his utter breakdown, and just going for his prized possession of the unspeakable act that occurs in between these lines that Poe has written for us. So I think it's just the answer to that question would be, what if that would be the case? That's a tragic, tragic story right there. The one thing that made you, you, is what destroys you, is what ends you. I mean, that's so Poe, right? That's so like tragic and sad and just something that should be written about, and he does it perfectly here. So basically, to just wrap up this video, next week we will be looking at the power of unspoken words, the power of subtle dialogue, and we'll find out who we're reading next Sunday. Like this video if you felt something, comment if you wrote something, and I will see you next Sunday at the midnight hour.